It's been a long journey. It's been a long wait. It's been such a long time since football gave me peace of mind. Bars. But the wait is over. Training camp is here. Welcome, one and all, to the 2025 Detroit Lions training camp preview. We made it, folks. We finally made it. The offseason is finally basically over. We are actually at football. Football is here almost. I needed it so bad, man. So today, my friends, as you can probably guess, we are going to preview Detroit Lions training camp. We're going to go through all of the positions, every single player that is on the roster right now, the coaching staff changes, position battles, breakout picks, who needs to have a good camp to stay on the roster, all of that good stuff. Before we get into it, if I could get you to hit that like button and drop a subscribe, that is not the right order, but that's what we're going to go with today, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any content as we get into training camp. We're going to be doing weekly reviews, weekly updates as training camp goes on, and obviously there's a lot more content to talk about, so there's going to be a lot more videos coming out on this channel in the very, very near future, so be on the lookout for that. But for today, this is all about training camp, setting up what is going to be the next 5 or 6 weeks of camp battles, of roster cuts. 53-man roster predictions will come out later. We'll do that in a bit. But yeah, man, it's here and it's real. So the way we're going to structure this video, I did mention the stuff we're going to talk about, but first we're going to go into just every player on the roster, every position group, the strengths, the weaknesses, just overall thoughts and feelings on each position group. And then we're going to get into the key position battles where there might be some jobs up for grabs. Then we're going to get into who I think are some good breakout picks. I'll contextualize breakout a little bit later. And then the last category is what I'm calling guys who are on the roster bubble that really need to have a good camp to stick around. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of guys that are battling to be on the roster, but I mean guys that could be surprise cuts. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it, into the first position group. That's right, the coaching staff. That's right, little curveball for you, but we do need to talk about the coaching staff because, well, that is probably the one area of this team that has been scrutinized the most over the offseason. Obviously, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn depart for greener pastures. This coaching staff has, as a result, seen a lot of turnover. So, who are the new coaches and what can we expect from them? Now, obviously, the head honcho, Dan the Man Campbell, the one guy that we really don't have to question, he is the CEO of this coaching staff, and that really is his archetype of coaching. He manages everything from a top-down level. He establishes the culture, which he has done a fantastic job turning around here in Detroit, and he just kind of has his hands in every department, just making sure that everything is running as smoothly as possible. Some people are going to criticize him for not being an offensive or defensive guru like so many head coaches around the league are, but I think Campbell is a lot more plugged into what makes this team work than people really give him credit for. I think that he is responsible for the offensive philosophy specifically, and he kind of just brings in defensive-minded guys that fit what he wants to do, but he's a little more hands-off on the defense. He's a little bit more involved on offense. Is he drawing up plays? Is he the one calling plays? No, he's done it for the Lions in the past, but that's not really his role. That's not what he excels at. He's just here to keep the engine going. Replacing Ben Johnson at offensive coordinator is John Morton. Now, Morton has bounced around the league a little bit. He was with the Lions in 2022 when Ben Johnson took over as the offensive coordinator, and he was actually responsible for helping design most of the offense, especially establishing the offensive principles with Johnson when they remade the entire offense that offseason. Then he moved on to Denver for a few years, and now he's back with Detroit, and he will be the one calling plays. I actually do have an entire video on John Morton specifically, so that video will be linked down below. I also have one on Kelvin Shepard, the defensive coordinator as well, who I'll briefly talk about, but full video for those two coordinators are going to be in the description because I've already talked about them. Most of the points are going to be the same, but Kelvin Shepard, he was Aaron Glenn's understudy. Glenn's been mentoring him for years. A lot of the same principles are going to apply, but first-time defensive coordinator, one of the harder coaching prospects. So excited to see how that goes and where he differs from Glenn in some of those principles and just in play calling tendencies as well. Now, one coach who is still on the coaching staff but has seen his title change is Scotty Montgomery. He was last year the running backs coach and assistant head coach. This year, he retains his assistant head coach title, but now he's the wide receivers coach as well. Now, this is happening for a few reasons. One, Montgomery has worked with wide receivers in the past, so it just kind of was a natural fit to slide him over. But he is also a coaching prospect that's on the rise and looking to be promoted in the near future. So Dan Campbell's helping him round out the rest of his skill set, prove that he can work with multiple positions to make him more appealing for an offensive coordinator job in the very near future. So enjoy Scotty while you have him. He is kind of the raw hype man underneath Dan Campbell for the offense, similar to how Deuce Staley was in the past when he was the running backs coach. Very similar guy, very fiery guy. Good coach. He's fun. Replacing him as the running backs coach is Tashard Choice, making the jump from college. Now, Choice has coached Jahmyr Gibbs in the past at Georgia Tech. He also coached Bijan Robinson at Texas. He's got a lot of experience coaching up running backs, and so now he has been one of the most coveted RB coaches in college football for a long time. He gets graduated up to the NFL, and again, hoping for great things there. It's kind of tough with these position coaches because, especially running backs, we already know that Gibbs and Montgomery are good, but excited to see what happens with their development this year. Quarterbacks coach is still Mark Brunell, as it has been for the last few seasons, and Hank Fraley is still the offensive line coach, one of the best in the business. He is going to be tested with handling the interior of the offensive line, which we'll talk about later in this video. He also gets the run game coordinator title added to his title because he was being headhunted for offensive coordinator jobs around the league. So Lions give him a nice little promotion and a nice little raise as well to keep him around, which, yeah, because you want to keep a guy like that around, especially at a time like this. Now, defensively, with Kelvin Shepard being promoted from within, that left a vacancy at linebackers. So Sean Dion Hamilton gets the promotion. He is now the full-time linebackers coach. I believe he was just the outside linebackers coach or assistant linebackers coach before. Now linebackers are his domain. Again, young coaches in the system, you got to keep developing them, and you like to see the development from within, the promotions from within, because that is the sign of a strong coaching staff. The only other one I'll mention is defensive line coach Casey Rogers, jumping over from Tampa Bay. Been raved about a lot. He's done a lot of good work with guys like Kalijah Cansey over there. So excited to see what he can do for young guys like Mekhi Wingo, maybe another undersized interior defensive lineman. Maybe he can unlock something from Josh Paschal. And also, how much more can he elevate Aiden Hutchinson? All very good questions, but he is also a very highly regarded defensive line coach, so a good get there. Those are really the only coaching staff things I wanted to mention. The rest of the guys, you can go look at the entire coaching staff. If I tried to break them down, this would be a 50-minute video, and we don't want that. So we're going to move on. All right, now time to get into the real meat and potatoes of this video. We are going to get into every single position, every single player on the roster, starting with quarterback. Quarterback is actually a very easy position to break down because there's only one interesting story here. Jared Goff is the starting quarterback. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Very good starting quarterback. The Lions are going to rely on him for years to come. The real question is the backup quarterback, because Hendon Hooker has been developing. He's been the backup for a little bit, but when it came crunch time in the playoffs, the Lions opted to put Teddy Bridgewater in a quarterback instead of Hendon Hooker. Bridgewater, who was signed off the street like 2 weeks before. So can Hendon Hooker take a step and truly cement himself as the backup? For that competition, he's going to be going against Kyle Allen. So when you're watching the 4 preseason games, that's something to look at. Is Hooker taking a step? Is he looking better in his progressions? Because last preseason, he looked good as a runner, but he ended up hurting himself as well. So kind of tough to tell too much with his development last year. This year, we really need to see him take a step as a passer. So that is a big thing to keep an eye out for. Can he really lock down that backup job? Or is this going to look like a bit of a questionable pick if he's still the third stringer? I shouldn't say still. He was the backup for the majority of last season, but he needs to retain that job and he needs to take a step in it. Now, running back is a little bit more interesting because obviously you have your starting two. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, great. Sonic and Knuckles, don't have to worry about them. Your third running back is a bit of a competition between Craig Reynolds, who has been with the team for a long time now, and Sione Vaki, who's entering his sophomore season. And again, he was a transfer from safety to running back at the NFL level. So a lot of questions there over his development. Can he challenge Reynolds for that third running back spot, especially with his special teams chops? Both of them do bring value on special teams, but Vaki does bring a little bit more in that regard. Those are your 4. The question is, will there be another guy that kind of steps up out of the group that's below them? So there's also Justin Jackson, who is going to get a lot of run in preseason, and Kai Robichaud, who I'll be honest, I don't know much about. But those two, running back 5 and 6, long shots to make the roster. They would have to have some incredible camps, but those are the kind of guys you're going to see a lot in the preseason games. So maybe they can show some chops there, but that's really just positional depth at this point. Wide receiver is similar to running back in the sense that the guys at the top of the depth chart are spoken for. There's no questions, no debates there. And then there's a few guys that are competing for one possible spot at the end. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's locked in. He's your wide receiver 1. Jameson Williams is locked in as your wide receiver 2. Tim Patrick is locked in as your wide receiver 3. And Khalif Raymond is locked in as one of your backup wide receivers / starting punt returner. The other guy that is going to make the roster is Isaac Tesla. So there's your 5 wide receivers right there. The real question is, will there be a 6th? If there is, could a guy like Dominic Lovett show enough on special teams to warrant being the 6th wide receiver? Will Tom Kennedy be his usual preseason star self and challenge for a roster spot? Will a guy like Jackson Meeks or Malik Taylor impress in camp at all? That's kind of what you have to look for. But again, we don't even know if the Lions are going to keep a 6th wide receiver. So probably a position group that's just really spoken for. Now, at tight end, there is a little mini battle for tight end 3. It's going to be between Shane Zylstra and Kenny Yeboah because Sam Laporta and Brock Wright are going to be the tight end 1 and 2. Luke Deal and Zach Horton, they would have to do a lot to overtake Zylstra or Yeboah for that tight end 3 spot, but those are 2 guys that could be looking at practice squad opportunities. Again, there's depth here, but there's only one job that's up for grabs. Offensive line, this is where things get a little bit interesting because the Lions cross-train a lot of these guys. They'll probably take 9, maybe 10 offensive linemen, but probably 8 or 9 is more realistic. So I'm going to start with the tackles, and then we'll get to the interior after. So starting tackles, Taylor Decker, Penei Sewell, they're spoken for. Don't have to even really talk about them. Dan Skipper is going to be the 3rd offensive tackle, probably, barring something unforeseen. Fan favorite, comes in as a jumbo tight end all the time. The real question here is, has Giovanni Manu taken a step to challenge Dan Skipper for that OT3 spot? Has Colby Sorsdahl taken a step to potentially either pass Manu or challenge Skipper as well? Those are 2 guys that have to have a good camp as well. And then beyond that, Mason Miller and Jamarco Jones, it's just depth. So at tackle, you've probably got 4 guys that are going to be on the roster at that spot. You got Decker, Sewell, Skipper, and Manu probably, unless Sorsdahl impresses enough to be kept as well. On the interior, it gets a little more interesting because you have 4 guys that are probably guaranteed a roster spot. Graham Glasgow, Tate Ratledge, Christian Mahogany, and Miles Frazier. The 2 rookies there are going to be big factors. A lot of moving parts on the interior. 3 spots are available for those 4 guys. Beyond that, though, are the Lions going to keep anyone? Because if you think about it, that's 8 offensive linemen, and that's usually what most teams take. So is a guy like Coyote Awashika going to get cut? Is a guy like Netani Muti going to make the team, or Michael Neese? Like, there are a lot of guys that have been veteran presences on the offensive line in depth roles before that suddenly are on the outside looking in. And it's just going to come down to, same as wide receiver, like, is there even a job to compete for? I would expect the Lions to probably keep 9 offensive linemen, the 4 tackles I talked about earlier, the 4 interior guys I just mentioned, and then probably Awashika. So that's probably the 9 you're looking at. But again, like, it's one of those things where there's going to be a bunch of guys battling for one spot. All right, future Zach here, because while editing this, I realized that I actually teased this and then never actually talked about it. The interior of the offensive line, the reason that this position is so interesting is because with Frank Ragnow's retirement, we have no idea who the starting center is going to be. It's expected that it's going to be one of Tate Ratledge or Graham Glasgow. Those are the 2 guys that saw time there in the spring. Those are the 2 guys that saw time there on day 1, because this is going out on Sunday, which is the first day of practice. That is going to be an open competition. If Ratledge is not the center, he will probably play one of the guard spots. And then Christian Mahogany, Miles Frazier, like, those 3 young guns will compete for the 2 guard jobs, and then Graham will be the center. If Tate is the center, then I imagine Graham is going to slide back to the right side at right guard, because when he switched to left guard last year to accommodate Kevin Zeitler coming in, Graham had a pretty bad down season. So I imagine he slides back to the right because he's a little more comfortable there. And then Ratledge will be the center, and then Frazier and Mahogany will both compete for the left guard spot. So that's the offensive side of the ball. Now let's look at the defensive side of the ball, starting at edge. Right off the bat, Aiden Hutchinson, the only question with him is how healthy does he look coming off the broken leg? That's going to be a big question. Is he as explosive? Is he going to be playing at the level that we now expect for him based on what we saw at the start of last year, which is a potential defensive player of the year candidate? That's a very high bar, and any deviation from that, it like any sort of regression from the leg injury is going to be met with disappointment, fair or unfair, but that's going to be something to monitor, is just how good does Hutch look. Opposite of Hutch, it looks like Marcus Davenport is going to be edge 2, at least to start the year. We'll see if he's able to stay on the field, which famous last words, as they always are, but he's got an opportunity in front of him. He just has to stay healthy. He plays, he sets the edge in the run, and he can clean up all the garbage on the backside when Hutchinson generates pressure. So if he's healthy, he should be a good piece. It's just his health, man. That's really the only question. Then below Davenport, we know Josh Paschal is going to be the third edge, presumably. He'll also kick inside on occasion, but very good run defender, like legitimately very good run defender that just has pretty much nothing going in the pass rush department, at least so far in his career. He has an okay bull rush, but he really has to develop his pass rush package outside of that. And I don't know if it's coming at this point. I really love Josh Paschal, but at this point, I'm not so sure if there's anything more to his game than being a solid run defender. And aside from that, you got guys like Ahmad Hassanein, who you hope can show something in camp because the Lions did invest draft capital into him. So can he be something similar to Josh Paschal, who's a good run defender that can maybe offer some chops as a pass rusher as well? I don't know. He's a super high motor guy, so you know that you're going to get the most out of him that he has to offer. I just don't know if what he has to offer is good, if that makes any sense. But that'll be another fascinating case. Great story for just as on a personal level. Like he has a great story for being an NFL player. So I hope that he does work out in some capacity because yeah, this dude's just easy to root for. Beyond that, you got guys like Isaac Ukwu, Miles Adams, Keith Cooper Jr., who I maybe Nate Lynn too. It's like these are the guys that are going to be competing for probably a practice squad role or maybe like that edge 4 role with Hassanein. I don't know. We'll just to wait and see. But where this gets interesting is on the interior of the defensive line because for starters, the number one guy, Aleem McNeil, is gone. He's currently injured. He's rehabbing from a torn ACL. He's probably going to be out for the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. We probably don't see him until November. So there's a lot of snaps up for grabs. Now, DJ Reader and Roy Lopez are going to get a good amount of those snaps, but those are two nose tackles, run defenders that can't really play they're not every down guys. So they'll play a lot on early downs, but how much are they going to offer you in the pass rush department? I don't know. Lopez will probably play a lot of 3-tech even on early downs with Reader at the nose, and then Lopez will kick over to be the nose slash other pass rusher on third downs, I guess. Or maybe you have guys like Josh Paschal kick inside. I don't know. There's a lot of fluidity here. This situation was primed for Levi Onwuzurike to take a step, have a breakout season. He was going to get all the reps in the world, especially pass rushing snaps, which is something that is what he excels at. And he is on the pup list. Of course, he gets hurt again. He's going to miss at least 4 weeks of the season. It's not like the pup list that you can be removed from at any time. He's going to miss 4 weeks, which is absolutely brutal. I hope it's not his back. So that's another guy that's a pass rusher that suddenly is not going to be there for the first chunk of the season. Future Zach back here again because, some bad news came out about Levi this morning. Dan Campbell confirming that Levi Onwuzurike tore his ACL and he's done for the year. And that also likely means that he's done as a Lion because he's on a one-year $4 million deal. He only got $4 million because of his injury troubles and the fact that he's never on the field. And now he's missing another year. His best asset was his explosiveness on the interior. So with that likely hampered due to the ACL, it's very possible that Levi's career is done. If not, like he might get a job for League Min next year just to be a camp body. But again, without that natural explosiveness and twitch, it's going to be hard for him to stick around in the NFL. Brutal news for Levi. Super talented player that just has had his entire career completely derailed by injury. So there's still even more snaps up for grabs. Now, obviously, a lot of these snaps are going to go to rookie first-round pick Tyleik Williams. He was the 28th overall pick in this past draft, and I swear nobody is talking about this guy. I know that the Ragnar retirement caused everyone to be only talking about Tate Ratledge from the draft, it feels like, but Tyleik Williams has just flown completely under the radar. He is going to get a lot of meaningful snaps early in his career. Another guy who could potentially take some of these pass rushing snaps, especially, is Mekhi Wingo, undersized defensive tackle, but he's got some pass rush juice, and I think that this is a guy that could take a step. I'm actually going to talk about him a little bit later. So on third downs, are we going to see like Tyleik Williams and Mekhi Wingo on the interior? I don't know, but it seems likely based on the injuries that are mounting on the interior already. Beyond that, you got guys like Pat O'Connor, Chris Smith, Raekwon Williams, who are going to just compete to be depth roles on this team. I think they probably will make, at least a couple of them are going to make the team because you just need bodies at this point. When Aleem comes back, these guys will get relegated to the practice squad. But yeah, if I'm being honest, the interior of the defensive line is probably where I'm most concerned about the depth. That and edge. Like, the depth here is, you have a lot of bodies, but I don't know how many bodies are going to help you as pass rushers. We might be looking at another year where it's just Aiden Hutchinson and his band of merry men out there. Moving on to linebacker now. We know the starters. Jack Campbell is your starting Mike. Alex Anzalone is going to be your starting Will. And Derek Barnes is going to be your starting Sam. Malcolm Rodriguez will factor in there as well as some depth, probably as a depth will guy. Zach Cunningham is going to be competing for a depth role as well. Al-Qadim Muhammad is going to help out on the edge, along with Trevor Nowaski. Those are guys that'll be kind of backups to that Sam role, even though Derek Barnes is really the only guy that can fill it adequately. And I gotta say, just as an aside, another guy that no one's talking about, but Derek Barnes, he played like 2.5 games last year in that new role. So I think having him back is going to just do wonders for this defense. Beyond that, you got guys like Ezekiel Turner, Anthony Pittman, Nowaski, who I just mentioned, that are going to compete for maybe some depth roles depending on what they bring on special teams. But I think that is going to go to Grant Stewart, who is probably going to be the fifth linebacker, who is just going to be your special teams ace. Think back a few years ago, Jalen Reeves-Maybin. It's that role where he's not really going to play defense, but he's going to be really important to the special teams. All right, switching over to corner now. We know who the two starters are. DJ Reed coming over from the New York Jets. He got a big contract in free agency. He is CB1. There's no doubt about it. Opposite of him, Terrion Arnold. He is CB2. There is no doubt about it. Arnold is another guy who's going to be a popular breakout pick just because he was thrown to the wolves as a rookie. So many man coverage snaps, and he survived out there. So in year two, is he going to be a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more prepared for some of these wideouts? And is he going to be able to take a jump? I don't know, but I'm pretty comfortable with those two as the starters. Then at the nickel, you've got Amik Robertson, who became a fan favorite last year, especially in week 18 when he played outside corner and locked down Justin Jefferson, which was crazy, honestly. The fact that he did that, good for Amik. Love to see him back. He had I think it was a broken arm he had in the playoff game against the Commanders. Bad memories. Now, the fourth corner is Ennis Rakestraw, who was injured for most of his rookie year. So curious to see how he does in his sophomore season with another training camp under his belt. Can he take a step? Can he challenge for a starting role? He was supposed to be the starting nickel week 2 last year before he got hurt. So clearly the coaching staff sees a lot of promise with him. The question I have is, how exactly does he fit into this corner picture? Because if one of Reed or Terrion get hurt, I would imagine Amik is the one who actually gets pushed outside, and then Rakestraw would go in as the nickel. But there's been a lot of talk about Rakestraw being primarily trained as an outside corner this year, so maybe he's just the primary backup on the outside, allowing Amik to stay as the nickel. But if Amik goes down, would he be the one? I don't know. There's a lot of questions with Rakestraw, but I think it's safe to say he is the primary backup cornerback that is going to see snaps, throughout the season. And I actually have a lot of hope for this guy as well. Beyond those guys, you've got Rock Ya-Sin, you've got Stanley Thomas Oliver, you've got Maurice Norris and Avonte Maddox. Now, granted, Maddox is probably going to be a safety, is what they've talked about, kind of being like a Brian Branch kind of role where he can play safety, can play corner, whatever. You've also got Khalil Dorsey, who is a special teams ace. Those guys are going to be competing for the probably fifth corner. I imagine they could take 5 corners and or maybe 9 DBs or maybe 10 DBs. I don't know. It's the same thing. It's kind of tough to project how many DBs they're going to take, but we'll get into safeties in a little bit. But there's probably 4 guys there that are competing for one job. And then at safety, you've got Brian Branch, you've got Kirby Joseph, one of the best young safety duos in the entire, actually the best safety duo. Well, young safety duo, maybe the best safety duo in the entire league. Kirby Joseph, coming off an all-pro season, led the league in interceptions, got paid a ton of money. Brian Branch, I actually was disappointed with the second half of last season, but I know that he has superstar potential, so I'm super excited for his third year. Hopefully he gets back to that level as well. Behind them, that's where things get a little bit interesting. You've got Dan Jackson, the rookie 7th-round pick, who's primarily a special teamer, but can he challenge for a depth role there? You've got Ian Kennelly, who will probably be the third safety as of right now, if I had to guess. And then Lauren Strickland and Eric Hallett, who are going to be competing for a depth row as well. Like I said, this kind of blends into the corner picture. Again, Avonte Maddox will probably be in the safety picture as well. They probably just have a set number of defensive backs that they're going to keep. So between corner and safety, you've probably got like 8 or 9 guys competing for 2 or 3 jobs. In special teams, this is not nearly as glamorous. Jake Bates is the kicker. He's going to be the kicker. Michael Badgley, I think, was brought back to be the backup kicker, but this team has a lot of high hopes for Jake Bates. They think that he can be a superstar in this league, which would be great. I just want him to continue what he did last year, which was be stable, but also have a big leg to be able to hit some of these 50-plus yarders and hit some clutch kicks as well when the time calls for it. At punter, Jack Fox is one of the best punters in the league, no question about it, so you don't have to doubt that. And long snapper is Hogan Hatton. So that is the entire roster broken down position by position. Again, there are not that many weaknesses on this team, but if I had to pinpoint a few, pass rushing from the edge and interior defensive line spots, and just depth along the defensive line in general. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into some breakout picks. Now, I have 2 guys that I already talked about pretty glowingly, but I just want to dive into them a little bit further. Mekhi Wingo and Ennis Rakestraw. I think Mekhi Wingo is ready to have a pretty impactful season, especially early on. He is just a bowling ball as a pass rusher. He's got some really good natural twitch from that 4-eye, 3 technique spot. Like, he isn't really an edge player, but he also doesn't really, he's not a nose tackle at all. Like, he's probably primarily a 3 tech that will play some 4-eye as well. I know Josh Pascal is probably going to eat into his snaps as well at those spots, but I think Wingo can really take a step, and if he can give you 15 to 20 good snaps a game, I wouldn't be surprised at all. At minimum, like, he was doing like 5 to 10 snaps. I think he can do like 12 to 15 minimum as a pass rusher. Run defense, a little bit questionable. He'll work on that. But as a pure pass rusher, especially while Levi is out, I think Wingo is going to get a ton of opportunity early in the season. If he's healthy, I have a lot of high hopes for him as a situational pass rusher. And I don't want to like overblow what I think he's capable of. I just think he's capable of being a very solid situational pass rusher. And then at corner, I did talk about him briefly, but I do think Ennis Rakestraw is primed for the surprise of camp story. Like, he was really good in camp last year, then he got hurt in the regular season, missed a lot of time, so he just didn't really get to play a lot of meaningful snaps. I think that this kid is really solid, and see, the thing is, I really thought that Terrion and Ennis were going to be the outside corners for years to come. But now that DJ Reed is here, I think Rakestraw is just going to be a really sick backup corner. But if either Terrion or Reed go down, I have a lot of hope that Rakestraw can step in and be a super solid option as well. Well, and then 2 guys that I've outlined as needing to, like, bubble players that really need to have a good camp to stay on the roster. And I circled these 2 in particular because there's a lot of bubble players, obviously, but these 2 had decent draft capital invested into them, and they really need to show out. One of them is Colby Sorsdal, who I talked about earlier. He is just kind of in flux. Like Giovanni Manu has kind of taken his role as the developmental tackle that the Lions are choosing to invest in. So can Sorsdal overtake him? Can he play guard? Like, can he switch to the inside and have a bit more success? Can he challenge Awushika for that ninth offensive lineman spot? I don't know, but it looks like it's put up or shut up time, right? Like Sorsdal has to have a good camp or he's gone. And the other guy, and this is a lot more unfortunate because a third round pick was spent on him in the very recent past, Broderick Martin, who I did not talk about with the interior defensive lineman. And that is for a reason, because I struggle to see where he fits on this team. Originally, he was drafted as a super athletic nose tackle, which you don't really see drafted in the third round, but the promise of his athletic upside is there, and he just has not really developed. There was a lot of hope that when DJ Reader was brought in, that he would be able to mentor Martin and hopefully help him along that way. So when Reader eventually moves on, then Martin would be able to step in as the run stuffing nose tackle. But now the Lions are not really pleased with where Martin's development is, to the point where they bring in Roy Lopez in free agency, who kind of takes that spot as the backup nose tackle. So now what is Martin's role? Well, I do have a lot of doubt whether or not he can make this roster at all. It's going to take a really good camp. And again, injuries are probably going to be the only reason that he has a chance to make the roster. If Levi and Aleem were healthy, I would have been packing Martin's bags already. Because those two are out, he has a chance to make the 53-man roster. But yeah, this is getting dangerously close to being a pretty high pick wasted. But those are my picks. You can let me know down in the comments below who you think are good breakout picks, who needs to have a good camp to stay on the roster. Regardless, I'd love to hear from you either way. And aside from that, that's sort of it. That is the training camp preview all wrapped up. Again, we broke down every single player on the roster, every single position group. So let me know down in the comments below what you are looking forward to the most with training camp, aside from football being back, because that's the most obvious answer. I think what I'm going to do is just weekly recaps about like what's going on in training camp that week. I'll check in after every single preseason game, including the Hall of Fame game, because I'm a sicko, just to see how these guys perform in game situations, because obviously we can't see practice with our own eyes. So we do value the preseason games a little bit more as fans when that's all we have access to. But I'll be doing recaps of what all the beat reporters have to say about these players in practice. And yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time. So drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Remember to hit subscribe if you loved it. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming content. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.